Entrepreneurship is hard, so let's fix that and dive into our heroes' journeys. This is Taking Flight, an entrepreneur's journey, and I'm Sarah Torville. Join me as we delve deep into the passions, expertise, and experiences of those already in flight. This show is sponsored by EO Atlanta. And welcome to our next episode of Entrepreneur's Flight, our podcast. We're very excited about our guest who is joining us today. I've been wanting to get him onto the show for some time. He is a very busy guy, but we made it happen. So he is a mentor, always lends a helping hand, an outstanding worker, a truly innovative leader, extremely dependable, and a life changer. He is the founder and CEO at Outsource Access, co-founder at One-on-One Connections, founder and CEO at Brad Stevens Training International, and he's also a host of a podcast called Automate and Delegate. Brad Stevens.
Hey, Sarah, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to our flight together here today.
Yeah, we're going to take flight and learn so much about your journey, and can't wait to share it with our listeners and our viewers. But we know how this works. We go straight in. We want to get to the nuts and bolts of all that education with you, Brad. So my first thing I really want to uncover with you is, like, what did you get right when you took your first flight into your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, probably like a lot of entrepreneurs, mine started very, very young. I have to say my first ventures in third grade was probably the first thing that I got right. Anybody remembers those little micro machines, little tiny toy rental cars? I was asked for them for every Christmas and every single birthday. And my parents used to take in a few Crown Royal beverages from in the purple velvet bags that they came in. For some reason, that's what I'm going to carry all my micro machines. So I ended up getting like 400 or 500 of these things for during my younger years. And so went into my little Christian school there in third grade with my Crown Royal bags, and would rent them to all of my classmates for a penny a piece. And so I actually had a my mom still has it, like the whole folder where I had a VP of marketing. We had business cards. I even had like a newsletter typed out with the year like 1989 at the top of it. So my dad used to drive me to school every day, and I'd always pick his brain with kind of the entrepreneurial family business situation. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first, and that's my first lesson I got right there. It's carried on today, is getting the right people in the right seats. Actually, my VP of marketing there in third grade was Winter Hawkins. I'll never forget her. She was one of my best friends in elementary school. But getting a chance to kind of get those wheels turning at an early age, and then translate into doing a tutoring company in high school, and then kicking off my entrepreneurial journey the rest of my path. But I'd say until I got shut down by my teacher, it created too much of a distraction. But that meant that was the biggest indicator that I got it right, is you're getting shut down by the authorities. Right?
Yes. So, yes. So you're saying getting the people in the right seats. So and I know you're playing with this a little bit, because obviously you're at school, but still you felt like, you identified that critical person to do the marketing. And that's not easy to do, is it? To find those right people.
It is not. And it's unfortunately a lesson I kind of forgot in my earlier, which I'll kind of reference in part of our conversation, and coming back to it. But it is so essential, getting the right people that you can trust and engage, right from the beginning. And she and I were buds, and it worked out well. We could depend on one another. And so it was a fun little entrepreneurial kickoff, my lemonade stand, if you will.
Yes. I'm just going to ask you, you mentioned your father driving you to school every day. So, and you were able to pick his brain. So was your father an entrepreneur too?
He was, yeah. So I grew up in a bit of an entrepreneurial type of family, going back to my great grandfather, with just different adventures. And so my dad actually ended up taking over and running with, the family business that was kind of going at the time in the manufacturing space and software space, actually in the movie rental business, which we all know where that went. And it's another whole story of kind of where that path, but I grew up around it, a whiteboard permanently hanging up kind of over the fireplace, and conversations I got to observe between my dad and my grandfather. And he would drive me to school every morning on the way to work and drop me off. And I didn't realize like how much I was subconsciously kind of absorbing it, and would just ask questions, and he would kind of share and so forth. And that was little thing in elementary school. So he was a co-pilot for me, if you will, early on in that venture, quite literally side by side.
Yeah, literally. That's great to hear.
Continue to take on that mentor.
Mm-hmm. So is he still a co-pilot to you to this day? And are there any other co-pilots you think have been very crucial to the growth as an entrepreneur?
Oh, for sure. going it alone is always ended in not a good place whenever I've had that happen in the past. And so no doubt he was, and even as of a phone call yesterday, a co-pilot, as he continues to be a great sounding board for me in his journey, which went on. And long story short, he's had a chance with even consulting that he's done, being over 3,000 small to medium businesses over the last 20 years, and has just gotten a cross section of every industry across this nation. So there's not much I can present to him that he hasn't heard a scenario or a case study and been able to give me insight. So he was a song co-pilot, and in my first company, which we'll talk about, actually my mom, my aunt, my grandmother were some of my first employees that actually helped answer phones in the first patient assistance medication business that I ended up starting, which we'll talk about.
Right. Okay.
The family has been a big part of the journey.
Very, very good. Oh my God, I can't wait to hear this story. So tell me, like, what is a challenge that you and your team had to solve recently? Like, this is really, I want you to uncover, because as we all know, as entrepreneurs, there's constant challenges. So is there something specific you can talk about which we can learn from?
Sure. And you're asking, recently, there's some interesting challenges that I can share, especially that ended up happening that launched my current company, a complete disaster that turned into the best thing in my entire life, which I can speak to later. But recently, and this kind of goes back to where we started on right people, right seats. So we're, I have an outsourcing business. We have a virtual staffing business out of the Philippines. We provide staff for business owners all over. And we've been fortunate. I mean, in 3.5 years, we've grown to almost 500 employees. And managing that hyper growth and managing the right people in the right seats at the management level has been a big challenge we've navigated. And everybody knows it, right? The people who get you there, can they take you there? Do you have to make changes and so forth? And so that is a big challenge that we've been navigating in my COO. And she's demonstrated actually the ability to raise her lid. Young woman that I hired, my very first VA personally, I hired at 23 years old, never been one before, never been in management. And she's my chief operating officer now, actually over the entire organization, and continues to raise her lid to grow, develop, and learn what she needs to learn. And so we've been working together on getting the right senior leaders. So actually, I just went back to the Philippines back in October. And my challenge to her is, before I went over, let's work and let's get the next level of senior leaders that we need, who's going to help us, because we're trying to double this year to 1,000 employees. And so that was the problem: getting the right people, getting them in the right seats. We made some compromises in the past with some people. To quote kind of the CEO Coaching International, Mark Moses, I heard him speaking and was talking about, when you rate people, you don't put a 7, right? They don't even allow you to put 7s on the survey. You got to choose above or below it. And we were tolerating a lot of 7s that create all the angst and frustration. Sometimes it's family members, sometimes it's friends, but also in business, they create all that angst. So we said, look, I only want 9s and 10s. So using tools. So how do we go about solving it? So I'm a fanatic about Jim Collins, and I can talk a little bit about that. But just his philosophy and all the studies he's done with all his books is, it starts with discipline people. The first who, then what. It just get the right people, and everything else will take care of itself. And then using EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which a lot of people use. And I love the GWC philosophy. Do they get it? Do they want it? And then do they have the capacity, right? I've got people who get it, right? But they don't want it, and they don't have the competency. I got people who have the capacity, but they don't get it and want it. So those two frameworks have been very helpful, along with just a very intentional assessment and interview process. Instead of just gut feel, doing interview, getting a couple of references, we put people through a battery of 14 to 15 assessments. We use Culture Index. We use Colby, use a number of different tools. And then using top grading. Top grading is a whole interviewing philosophy that you put the way that you interview candidates. And then just very, very intentional case studies, right? To ad nauseum, as we would do intense case studies when people want to come on. My marketing director, my CMO, he about lost his mind, but I gave him about 4 different case studies. Here's a scenario, present to me how you're going to solve this problem. So that's how we've gone about solving it. And I'm very fortunate. I just had a management call 2 days ago with that team, and I'm very pleased with the players we have in those seats. They're galvanizing, they're having healthy debate, they're engaged, and I think they've got the right foundation to take us to the next tier.
That's great. So I've not heard of this top grading philosophy. So I've heard of all, I know there's a lot to be said around interviewing and hiring the right people. And obviously it's a massive subject on its own. Just scratch on the surface for me, if you don't mind. What's the top grading piece beyond everything else, like Culture Index? What does that next piece do? Is it just how to interview?
Well, it's approach that they face multiple interviewers, right? In more than one interview through the whole process, right? To find the right people who are going to fill those roles. So it's having multiple people that are looking at them from multiple perspectives and angles. and we've kind of blended it with some other things out there, but it's we want multiple people that are looking through the lens and through their departments who they're going to have to interact with, to evaluate them effectively, to make sure that we're going to get the most qualified, candidate in the whole process.
Right.
And we've kind of integrated that with, a philosophy is just the types of questions that they ask me. You can learn so much about an individual by the types of questions that we ask. We all know some of the best and most intelligent people in our lives, a lot of time, the ones that ask you the best questions.
Yeah.
So we'll give a scenario, and before I even want them to give me the answer, I just want to know, what are the 10 questions you would ask me to get more information to resolve this challenge? And it was really, really insightful. Are they asking for the right information and the right approach?
It says a lot about what they know and the way they think and how they might approach something. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly. Really good. I can't imagine. So you've got basically, your intent is to hire 500 more people in 2023. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, it's we're 500 as far as our target. It'll actually end up being more than that with any kind of attrition and so forth that we may have in the process. But yeah. So we're in the people that not only do we apply this in our senior management level, but even down to the front line, every single frontline virtual staff that comes on board with us, because we actually hire them as full-time employees in the Philippines. So we bring them on, we pay health insurance and benefits. So we want to make sure we're getting the right people that we match with our clients. And we do a pretty intensive process, IQ testing, emotional intelligence testing, just all the things to give us the best chance for understanding who they are. Now, human beings, as we all know, can still never cease to amaze us despite all those assessments, but at least you're putting your best foot forward to know you've done everything exhaustively to try and get a good handle on those individuals.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you're in the people business. You got to find the right people. So you're not selling a product, you're selling a service. So 100%. So favorite book right now, Brad, is there, and I don't know if that relates to helping, you mentioned just a book just a moment ago, but is there a favorite book right now? Is it aligned to the challenge that you've been overcoming, or is it just something else you just want to share with us?
I'll reference, and I mentioned kind of Jim Collins, and I know a lot of people have heard Jim Collins, and one gift I would like to give to listeners that was given to me is to really go revisit that. Our EOS implementer made us read Good to Great as a management team, and I was like, I read that back in my 20s. They talk about Circuit City and isn't that dated and so forth. Reading it through the lens of running this company and at fast growth, and also I was president of EO Atlanta during that time as well. It was like a whole different way of viewing it. I was like, these are the timeless principles, that it's empirical, data driven. So I ended up getting really passionate about that and kind of revisit all of his books. And a lot of people don't realize that on jimcollins.com, you go to his website, and under the tab called concepts, he has taken all of his concepts from all his 7 books and reduced it down to a thing called the map. And it's taking all the principles, the hedgehog, the flywheel concept, all of the different Stockdale paradox, which I quoted just yesterday. I bring that up nonstop. He has it in a very tight framework. It has a 22-minute video that he literally takes 30 years of research and boils it down to 22 minutes that he shares in that map about disciplined people, disciplined thought, disciplined action being built to last, and just beautifully captures it together. So it's actually every frontline VA that joins us in our company, I ask them to watch and see that to understand the philosophy of how we run and build our company. That's great. Currently, I'll share one quickly, is the 6 types of working genius, because that is a foundation for me. So when I look back, a lot of times entrepreneurs, and I think business owners and myself, we can get endorphin hits off of consuming the next framework, the next idea, before we go and execute and squeeze all the juice out of the ones we've already learned. So I tried Collins' framework. I think for me is very timeless. So I try to read things that dovetail with it, and EOS. And so Pat Lencioni came out with a book and a framework called The 6 Types of Working Genius, and been engaging that recently. And it has been very, very eye-opening of thinking about how work gets executed in a business, the difference between, the wanderer versus the executor versus the people that can get it to the finish line. So 6 types of working genius. And he does it as kind of a fable narrative. And so the CEO that he talks about in the beginning of that book, hit me between the eyes, because it's exactly where some of my frustrations were. And it literally gave me the exact keys to solve that challenge.
Great. I love that. You're sharing some phenomenal advice. Thank you for that, Brad.
Sure.
Okay, so what excites you about the future? What does the future of flight look like right now for Brad Stevens and all the businesses that you're involved in?
I have to say, one thing is being a parent and my children. I'm just ecstatic about just the journey and their path ahead. Another book I'm engaging right now is The 5 Love Languages of Children, and I saw
that on your social media yesterday. I love that.
it's crazy how many text messages and comments I've gotten from people that said, I needed to hear that right now. And you know, again, at the end of the day, I'm not saying I've got all this. I mean, part of the reason is it holds me accountable. That's why I do this post when I do on social about things I'm taking away, because it helps it burn in my brain and remember them. But just some fundamentals. And I just, the world that it's an exciting world that's happening, but it's also the most complex world I think that our children are entering into. And I just think parenting has never been more critical to get it right, to be proactive. So I'm excited about that and the journey. My kids are 3 and 6, and they're just a wonderful, fun age right now, but it's also just really where things start really getting imprinted deeply and how you're shaping them, right? I mean, a lot of these assessments out there, Culture Index, and a lot of them, they talk about by the ages of 11, 12 years old, your kid is hard coded for the rest of their life, right? As human beings for a lot of things. So trying to get that right. And then secondly, I'll just say the globalization of work is really cool, you know, with obviously the industry that I'm in, but at the end of the day, people all over the world are able to collaborate together to get things done. So work is now flowing naturally to where is the highest and best use. And so it's cool to see that. I mean, here I am, one person in the United States, and I've got 500 people on the other side of the world, and got other people in different countries that are doing things, and just constantly seeing. And what it's bringing is bringing happier individuals too. People are waking up every day doing the stuff that they like doing. That's the best use of their time, and gives them opportunities that maybe they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So it's exciting to see how it's all shaping up.
Definitely. Yeah. I'd love to unpack a little bit. Like, how did you come to the realization you wanted to, you know, run a business? I mean, because I've done a lot of work in other countries too, and I know you spend a lot of time traveling backwards and forwards, but is that challenging, being the only person here and being 500 people? I mean, obviously you've got a good operations person, you mentioned that, but like, what are some of those challenges? Sorry, that wasn't on the script, but I'm just interested.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's plenty of them for sure, but you know, an interesting byproduct that I learned is that by me not being there, our business has grown faster. The irony of it, in that, you know, as I know myself and as business owners and entrepreneurs, we can clog the wheel, right? Because we can dive down rabbit holes. We can not follow my own advice, which is the 85% rule. Like, look, if it's brain surgery, it can be 85%, but if it gets 85, 90% of the way I would get it done, and it keeps moving down the road, then let it move. Right. Or we see challenges or issues and we go down and we halt the whole team. So by not being there in the office day to day and seeing every single thing that's going on, it kept me from halting some of our growth and opportunity by going down rabbit holes that would have kept us. Now, there's certain things that you got to keep guards on, and from legal and insurance and so forth. You got to make sure, and those have been my priorities. But so that's been an interesting, ironic outcome of it. But but it just happened as a by chance. I mean, a lot of it was trust, and found this young woman that I connected with personally, and because of the work I was giving her and the way I was treating her and the way that we were collaborating together. And it was when GLC, a Global Leadership Conference for EO, was in Macau. I was like, you know what, why don't I just go ahead and fly on over to the Philippines? I've been working with her for a couple of years, and said, hey, if we're going to launch our own operation. So I went over, toured a bunch of facilities, and decided to kick it off. And so I launched it in June of 2019, June of 2019. And so it was right before COVID, obviously, right? And so we had grown down to 80 or 90 people by the end of 2019, and then COVID happened. And one of the big challenges but opportunity was I was about to sign. I was actually on my forum retreat in Costa Rica, and I remember I did a presentation to my forum because I was about to sign on a 150-person office building, a physical office building in the Philippines. And this was in January, February of 2020. And I was like, is this COVID thing real? Like, should I sign on this? And we decided not to. Right. And it forced us to build a distributed work from home workforce with our team. And what that did was we learned how to make people feel engaged and connected with a lot of really cool culture things that we ended up doing virtually. But it allowed us to scale tremendously because we weren't constrained by a physical office space that people had to come into. So it was a big challenge at first, is how to build and manage that, especially during the pandemic and everyone dealing with the mental health challenges of everything else, being at home and disconnected. But it goes back to the right people. And so we just kept focusing on getting the right folks in, and system and process. I actually hired an EO Philippines member to be my EOS implementer over there, which was an absolute godsend. Having, be a big commercial for EO, but I mean, naturally it's been a huge part of my life the last decade, and I've leaned in, and they connected me. And so Aya is her name. And so she helped implement EOS, and we had to do it all virtually, but that was the glue, frankly, that helped us together, because we kept growing rapidly even during COVID, and managing that process. So lots and lots of lessons to learn, but those are kind of a few as we got things kicked off.
Yeah, no, this is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Like, you're just sparking lots of ideas in my brain right now. So I appreciate that. So I know our listeners and viewers will feel the same. So, so who are you, Brad? I mean, it's like, I find you have so much energy and I love it. Every time I talk to you, I feel energized. And there's obviously, you've done so much to kind of get to the point where you're at. So kind of give us a bit of a highlight before you, okay, it sounds like you were always an entrepreneur. We heard that at the age of 4 years of age, or whatever age you said it was when you were younger, but like, who are you? What shaped who you are today, do you think?
There's a lot of factors, I would say. Well, like anyone, I mean, in terms of nature versus nurture, I mean, I think fundamentally who I am as an individual, my parents, obviously everybody points back to immediately. It's interesting. My parents are kind of an interesting blend. My dad's kind of a more pure analytical type, and my mom is fantastic analytics as well, but also just got very good relational, capability and emotional capacity, and kind of the empathetic piece. So I think I was fortunate to get a pretty decent blend between the two of them, which has been very helpful, kind of going forward. To business has a lot of analytical, data-driven decisions, but there's also the emotional and the empathetic connection piece. And I think I've been very fortunate to have that blend, and I had an amazing family growing up. I have, my mom's one of four, my dad's one of four, and growing up, I think subconsciously, back to that, we talked earlier about you're shaped so much before the age of 12. I had an army of people around supporting me and cheering me on at a young age, there for all my ball games and there for all my events and so forth. And I don't think people realize like how powerful that is. When you hear 40-year-olds in a room talk up and about where their challenges are, they point back to, well, nobody was there for my stuff when I was 8 years old. I didn't feel that support. So I think I was very fortunate, consciously, subconsciously, to have a powerful support system of people who were there encouraging me to build my self-confidence. And because that's what you take with you the rest of your life, to take risks, to do the things we have to do as entrepreneurs and otherwise, like you got to have self-confidence. And so I was fortunate to have that, that kind of early on in the game plan. But it's translated, I think, when it comes to the empathy side and giving back as well. I think that's been a big part of that I've always had and built into my mindset at a young age. So I've helped start nonprofit initiatives. Did a whole deal for breast cancer, a big skeet shooting event we did for 4 or 5 years, and then building this company with Outsource Access. My VA, J-Cell, who I hired 2 months after working with her, she sent me this picture in this village of a bunch of shoes on the ground and with a bunch of children. She said, "Brad, I just want you to know, because of the money I'm making working with you, I'm able to kind of buy all these shoes for these children. I have to walk 1.5 miles back and forth to school, or 1.5 hours back in school." And so tapping back in, I just always want to do that type of element in our business. And I got a chance, because of EO, I got a chance to go to the United Nations headquarters and learn about the Sustainable Development Goals. And so I told J-Cell that day, I said, "Hey, I don't know what we're going to do with this whole thing, if we're going to start a business around it, but if we do, I want that to be a big part of what we're doing." And that's probably been one of the biggest enjoyments for me of growing this business is the impact and life-changing element. I've seen it happen. J-Cell, she actually just sent me a picture. She just built a house from scratch, built her own home for and actually bought a piece of property over there, which her life and background would have never been possible from a lot of times. So it's been a big part of kind of, I think, giving back and trying to be purpose driven. If you, back to Jim Collins, right? It's the companies that are purpose driven and people feel recognized and they're a part of something bigger than themselves. So it's certainly don't get it all right. And there's lots more ways I can give a whole lot more, and trying to continue to work on other ways we can do that. But I think I attribute that to my family and kind of building that in kind of early on, but love athletics and enjoy playing guitar and doing some singing kind of as far as side hobbies. But that's and some fly fishing. Love to hit a stream out there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This seems like EO has a bit of a band going on, because then I just spoke to somebody this morning who also plays the guitar, also sings. I like to sing, used to be in a band. I'm sure we pulled us all together and be quite instrumental. So you never know. That may happen one day.
No doubt.
So how exciting. Okay. So present day, what problem do you solve, Brad? And what impact have you made? You just talked about some impact, which is incredible. And I know, these people are working hard and are being a good partner to you, but at the same time, you have open doors for people I think because of the relationship type of person that you are as well. But talk to me like maybe more about the business. Like, what problem are you solving for your clients?
We are, in the simplest terms, I think, and from my own experience of stumbling across this whole offshore staffing world and what it did for me, it's just helping small to medium businesses, because I don't have a real interest in going after Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 and being like a call center. It's helping businesses, particularly business owners and their staff, to get more done and enjoy more life, to be honest. If you're looking at, I look at things in terms of like, you're not selling the drill, you're selling the hole in the wood, right? And the hole in the wood, ultimately, the final outcome is entrepreneurs are wrapped around the axle so much, right? There's a reason why only 4% of businesses get to $1 million a year in this country, because they are so much hammering that growth ceiling and can't scale and get on the other side, and it dramatically impacts their quality of life. They're maxing out credit cards, they're stressing out, they don't have the relationship with their spouses, their children, and so forth. So I know it sounds a little ooey gooey from an emotional standpoint of what our business, but that's the hole in the wood. And what I see when I talk, what I had it happen for me and why I chose to launch this whole business, I was like, man, this has changed my life. The way I scale and grow a company, I'm able to do things I was never able to do before. And then I see our clients that go from 1 to 5 or 6. And one of our clients, Chip Dodd, who's actually a member of Southeast Virginia, he's got a business. They provide nurses for home health care. And he was still running the business day to day and so forth. Well, he learned about this world, got his own VA. Now he has one for all of his staff. He was able to depart entirely out of the business and travels the world doing adventure races, raising money for nonprofits called Disability, right? Literally changed his entire life. So in terms of the feature and benefit, it's going in and being able to absorb the administrative and operational clutter in a business in 2 categories. One, what are things that people, owners and their staff, that are doing that they don't need to be doing, that aren't the best and highest best use of their time? And then the second is, what are the things that they're not getting to in the business? We've been meaning to do more on LinkedIn. We've been meaning to get video testimonials on our website. We've been meaning to get our QuickBooks cleaned up, and they're not getting to it. So those 2 buckets tend to create a big list of things. And so our staff plug in, they're fast learners, good communicators, can take feedback. And the big thing I learned in this industry is a lot of people too, and even hiring locally, is I almost didn't hire Jaysel, who's now my CEO of the whole company, because she didn't know the exact software that I was using. She didn't know the exact tools. What I was missing, and the woman I was working with said, Brad, I think to learn quickly. But thank goodness I did, because it's abilities, their passion, their drive, their attitude, a lot of the stuff can be learned.
I agree with you.
It's the same type of situation.
No, that's great. Very, very cool. Okay. So introspection question. This question is always so interesting. I can't wait to ask you. I think I know the answer, but let's see. If you were to do this all over again, would you do it all over again?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Absolutely. I mean, it's, I don't look at challenges. I mean, that's one thing I think I've grown a lot in the last 10 years is in my 20s and even my early 30s, I would look at challenges and issues and things that came up as, woe is me, and why is this happening to me, and so forth, and other challenges we've had with the business and so forth, and figuring things out. But every single one of them translate into a very, very positive, outcome. And so, this business I launched right now, Outsource Access, is because my last business, we manufactured and distributed teeth whitening products. We had a product that gas filled up in when the manufacturers changed one of the components. And basically, we said 10,000 faulty products globally. And I was forced to learn about this offshore world to get things done lower cost to help save my company at the time. Worst thing in the world was possibly happening to me, but it forced me to learn this stuff, and then translated me into launching this business. It's now the most aligned I've ever been in my life. So, so every challenge that happens, I just, and that's very cliche in a lot of ways, but I think there's younger listeners that are in the middle of a mess. They're in the middle of a challenge. Is just truly having the half full approach to it and finding where the learning lessons are and getting on the other side. Yeah,
no, very true. It's great. I agree with you as well. Totally. Every tough
now, if you don't
area,
learn from them and you keep repeating them,
well, then
that's a whole other problem.
That's an issue. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Actually, I went through that a little bit myself in the last couple of years, kept allowing the same thing to happen over and over again. And then you're like, literally hit a brick wall. So don't do that. I learned that way. Just if you see a problem, get it fixed and move forward and learn from it. So, and I have, so there we go. There's a good outcome.
Exactly.
So bonus round, like, what do you do outside of work? You mentioned, you sing, which is great, and you like to play the guitar. Your kids are so important to you, which I love. They're gorgeous. I've seen them on social media, beautiful looking children. But tell me, what else? What else is going on outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, it's kids are a big central part, and so their passions end up being my passions in terms of what they're engaging in. So doing a lot of Kiwi kits with my daughter, and my son likes wearing his cowboy boots everywhere and loves getting out. And we're out there moving firewood yesterday. So
Right.
I'd say it's a lot of micro hobbies kind of tied to my kids. But outside, yeah, actually, so guitar. I mean, I've gone in and out of playing, and it's something I want to get much better. It's one of my commitments this year is actually getting somebody to come over and do instruction to kind of take it to the next level. So definitely enjoy it. And yeah, trout fishing. And I love shooting guns as well. I love skeet shooting, doing some bird hunting, pheasant hunting. I actually just did an event recently with some YPO and EO members doing some pheasant hunting.
Right.
So
Very
look forward to
cool.
getting back out and enjoying some of those hobbies and hitting the golf course from time to time.
So trout fish, do you say trout fishing?
Yeah.
So my experience of trout fishing, I don't know if this is the right experience, but in the UK, we would have trout farms. And I was very young, but literally you just didn't have to do anything. You kind of throw your fishing rod in and you catch trout. And then we would go home. My mum would gut the trout and I would take it around to the neighbors and I would sell it. This was my entrepreneurism coming through. I would sell it, make a nice little profit, provide it with some ice, package it, pass it to the neighbor. And every Sunday they got fish. And I used to make, do pretty well out of it. My mum didn't like it so much because our washroom in the kitchen area just stunk of fish every day of the week but is it the same here in America? Like, is a trout farm, is it that easy, or is it not that easy?
Sounds like I need to take a trip.
Yeah, you need to go to England
and do some trout fishing.
Yes.
I mean, you get in some good streams. Actually, we did an EO event recently, and there's some amazing streams here in Atlanta that if you go into some stocked areas and so forth, you can catch them pretty well if they're not wild. Now, wild trout are very difficult to catch versus the ones that are stocked farms. But I love doing float trips too, where you hop in a boat, you have a guy just sitting in the front and the back, and you float down and catch 25. 30 fish. That's a more efficient path a lot of times, but it's just a peaceful experience. And North Georgia here are some beautiful streams to kind of go and enjoy that. So
I was about to say, Georgia does lend itself for that type of outside living, and all the lakes and streams we have are amazing. So, well, this has been a great conversation, Brad. I feel like I got to know you better. I learned from you, and I'm hoping, I know our listeners and viewers will feel the same. Thank you for sharing all of that. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, do a lot of social posting. I kind of look at social as kind of like my digital scrapbook. So you'll see some business things and some personal things that I share. When I look back at my kids, I can go on that and kind of see what my life was about. So yeah, if you just look me up on Facebook, I think it's Brad Stevens 44 is my actual handle on Facebook, and then on LinkedIn. And so I can imagine I have some VAs that help me. I do some posting and they help kind of replicate it out there.
Yeah.
But our website, I mean, if anybody's interested in kind of see what our business is about and what we do, and a lot of we have a bunch of educational content at outsourceaccess.com. And then one-on-one connections, the number 1connections.com, as we're helping build kind of connections in the member-based types of organizations. But if anybody's interested too, and as I share this in all podcasts and too, is we set up an email address that's just tools, TOOLS, at outsourceaccess.com. You don't need to write anything in it. If you just put like, Taking Flight podcast in the subject line. But if you just send an email to that, we actually got a bunch of great tools and resources and recordings around all kinds of things with content and links to like our podcast and what have you. So if people have enjoyed some of the things I've shared, I love educating and creating content. So you send an email to that, we'll kick you some resources and things kind of tied to some things that I've shared, even including that Jim Collins curriculum. I actually created a Jim Collins curriculum tied back to that video I mentioned.
Amazing. I'm now starting to realize why I think you're so productive. It's because of the VAs you have in your life. The virtualists. I mean, would you agree? I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to think like you're gonna, I even see when I send you an email and your out of office comes on and you have a list of all this stuff. It's like, and I'm just asking you, do the VAs help with all that? Is that something which enables you to be that much more productive? You're kind of living the life that you're selling. Is that right?
1,000,000,000%. I mean, that's why the name of my podcast is Automate and Delegate. And that's actually the theme. I mean, it's about, Absolutely. I mean, my team, it's taking the time to architect process. And if you take the time to do it, and that's the challenge, a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like the famous last words of death of the non-scaling entrepreneur. It's easier for me to just keep doing it myself than to train someone else on it.
Yeah.
And so, and some of those recordings that I share, but it's absolutely, it's practicing what I preach in terms of how can I, I share like one example. My watch was broken when I was first started using a VA, and I just kept thinking like creative, like how can I use another resource to this? So instead of me Googling and trying to figure out how to get my watch fixed, I just took a picture of it and sent it to JCell, and I said, hey, could you figure this out? So you went online, searched, found the facility, filled out the repair document, logged in my UPS account, created a shipping label, and had it all in my inbox the next day. And it's like those little things kept unlocking, and I'm like, okay, that's 2 hours of my time that kind of got released. Well, how do I find my daughter wants a unicorn birthday party? Go Google and figure out, places in Atlanta that have horses that dress up as unicorns for birthday parties, right? And a Google Doc comes back with a list of 15 of them and all their pricing. So it's all the death by paper cuts in life. Because ultimately we all as entrepreneurs want to be sitting in that visionary, strategic, where our superpower is. And it's getting all that other stuff kind of off your plate. And like my auto reply, like I kind of have that perpetually going. Is it? If you train people that you're there to respond all the time immediately, if you don't get things in other people's hands, it's like, hey, I check email once a week, see below all the people that can help you with everything that you could possibly need. And they do. So it's shifting a mindset and approach of like, I've got to have my hands on everything all the time. It's kind of tough to scale.
No, I agree. I've woken up to exactly what you do now and how you help. So sorry, it's taken me all the way through this podcast. And I'm like, I get it. It now makes sense. And love it. Well, thank you so much, Brad, for joining us today.
My pleasure, Sarah. Thanks so much for your time and commitment to listen to all of us entrepreneurs ramble on our life journey, and appreciate what you're doing. And hopefully we continue to spread the word. Yeah, no, definitely. Well, thank you as well to our audience. If you learned something today, maybe you laughed, maybe you just like feel so good about the knowledge share you're getting from the Entrepreneur's Flight podcast, please do tell someone about this podcast, and really kind of share the love with other entrepreneurs, because there's a place for them to go and get support and knowledge. Thank you again, Brad, for joining us. And this has been another exciting episode of EO Atlanta's Taking Flight, and I will see you guys next time. And so that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at takingflight.live. For more information about EO Atlanta, visit eoatlanta.org. Special thanks to the following sponsors: